Welcome to Inspired Living with Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. Every Wednesday, Marc, along with his special guests, will explore thought-provoking topics and ideas that promote creativity, self-help, healing, happiness, and well-being to inspire you on your spiritual journey. Each week, Marc will discuss different paths to achieving a more spiritual, balanced, happy, and healthy lifestyle. Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience and all things spiritual. Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. Marc is a tested, certified, and professional spiritual medium, metaphysical teacher, healer, and spiritual advisor with a spiritual practice based in Seattle, Washington. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
Death is not an ending, but a symbol of movement along the path upon which we are all traveling. As it may be painful to lose contact with the physical aspect of one we love, the spirit can never be lost. We have been and always will be a part of each other. And that's the quote from the late, great John Denver, who tragically passed away at the age of 53 in an airplane crash. And wanted just to open up our show because we're going to have an amazing show here on Inspired Living. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be in this magical, magnanimous, magnificent, majestic, marvelous, metaphysical, miraculous, mind-awakening, mind-boggling, and mind-blowing planet of ours. This is Inspired Living Radio, where we like to say, where you are the inspired and the inspiration. So let's be inspired, let's inspire others, and let's inspire before we expire. I am your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, here with you yet again for another soul adventure and an inspiring episode to explore, discuss, and discover the many diamonds within each and every one of us and the many gems in our world that have yet to be revealed. So get comfortable, grab your favorite drink, kick back, sit back, or lie back, take in a nice, deep, healing, peaceful, and cleansing breath, and let us prospect and learn together as we're going to discuss today's show topic, which is a new book from a guest who has been on the show. It's been about 4 years, Nanci Danison, and she's written a new book called 33 Souls Who Met God, Accounts of Atheists, Buddhists, and Christians Who Died and Met the Same God. We had Nanci on about 4 years ago, right as the pandemic was, I think, unraveling in 2020, if I remember correctly. I think that's what my team told me. And we did an episode on her best-selling book, Answers from the Afterlife. And it was one of our more popular episodes that we've done here in the 9 seasons of Inspired Living. So we wanted to bring her back and, not only promote her new book, but dig deeper into this title of 33 Souls Who Met God, especially with accounts from atheists, Buddhists, and Christians who died and met the same God. So we're going to have that as our show topic today and journey on the many pathways of life to dream, discover, explore, and experience what I like to say through body, mind, and spirit for another inspiring, uplifting, and educational episode. We do always want to give a big shout out and thank you to all of our inspired listeners from around the globe, the universe, and beyond. My team and I here in Inspired Living Radio are always so very humbled and grateful to you for listening, downloading, subscribing, leaving reviews, and voting to make now Inspired Living Radio and Podcast not only a best inspirational show, but a best spiritual show to follow and listen to as referenced and sourced by FeedSpot. So we want to say we really appreciate it. Keep listening. We really appreciate you. We have more fantastic shows like today coming up. We have one more show in 2024, and then we move into 2025, which is the year of the 9, which is all about completion and numerology. And we already have some wonderful guests lined up. And of course, to all of the inspired listeners out there, happy holidays and many blessings to you, your family, your friends, and your fur babies. If you have not yet subscribed, liked, or followed the show, there's always time to do so over on our main social media platforms. Our community page is Inspired Living Radio and Podcast on Facebook. It is an open community page. You're more than welcome to join us there. You can also follow us over on Instagram and X, formerly known as Twitter. Just look for the name Inspired For Us. That's the number 4, Inspired For Us. And of course, our YouTube channel, Inspired Living Radio. And we're now streaming through Audible. Or you can simply ask Alexa to open up Inspired Living Podcast, and that will play the latest episode. So as I like to always say before my shows, a new day, a new opportunity, a day we've not seen before to use our intuition to prospect this wonderful world around us. Are we ready to go prospecting? I think that we are. So, like I said, today our guest is coming back. It's been a few years, and we had her on with one of our more popular podcasts called The Book She Wrote, Answers from the Afterlife. But now on this episode, we're going to dig deeper and go prospecting for 33 souls who met God. And Nancy's new book differs from the traditional near-death experience model of our expanded afterlife experiences. The 33 Souls provides quotes written in words of the experiencers themselves that consistently confirm that God is nothing like human. We do not continue to be human in the afterlife, and the purpose of creation is for Source to experience the physical world life through us. We do not have to earn our way to heaven by following church-established rules. Death only applies to the bodies we inhabit. We are eternally safe and loved, and so much more. And I think you'll enjoy this book when it comes out. And I open on our page, I have a quote from Nancy, and she says this, quote, "What happens when a near-death experiencer is not stopped by a barrier or being from progressing further into the afterlife? 33 souls who found out have returned to reveal the mind-blowing wonders and surprises of what we call God and the afterlife," end quote. And just a little bit more about Nancy. Before retirement, she was a practicing health lawyer and former litigator for 36 years. First with the prestigious Midwest 270 attorney regional law firm, and then a solo practitioner. She was listed from 1998 to 2020 in the Bar Register of Premier Lawyers, a listing of the 5% of the U.S. attorneys voted by their peers to have a quote, A-level legal skills and very high ethics, end quote. She was also named to Central Ohio's top lawyers for 2009 through 2020 in the practice areas of Medicare, Medicaid law, and healthcare by Columbus CEO magazine. In 1998, she was a who's who in American law, recognized for leadership and competency. Now she devotes a significant amount of her time disseminating the spiritual information that she gained during a very extensive afterlife experience, which followed her death in March of 1994 through anaphylactic shock during an invasive radiological procedure and several brief subsequent afterlife visits since then. To date, Nancy has published 5 books, 20 CDs, and DVDs. She offers a monthly free electronic newsletter article that answers readers' questions, and she has some 20-some YouTube videos that you can check out on her YouTube channel. Some of her workshops and some upcoming radio shows and interviews. She'll get into more details on her workshops tab later in the show. And then she went into the light as a semi-practicing Catholic and returned with all the beliefs turned upside down and backwards. Nothing I experienced or learned in the afterlife confirmed any of my former, parentheses, kind of scary religious beliefs, the human origin of which she witnessed the form of a documentary type review, which is interesting, on Earth's history. In its place, she was given a much simpler, kinder, more loving, but completely unlike human thinking explanation of God and Source and its purpose for creating the universe. At the end of my life-changing sojourn into the light, she voluntarily, bless her, returned to human life to share the information that she had gained. A few months after her return, she left the security of her big law firm and set up her own firm so that she'd have more freedom to both practice law and bring forth more spiritual messages. Surviving death erased her fears of death, and so she started doing the things fear had always held her back from doing and enjoying, including getting a private pilot's license when she was 50, and she became a private detective at 55. And her beyond death experiences provided her with a unique opportunity to view human life from the perspective of one who is transformed into a being of light. And like beings of light, other near-death experiences encounter. If you want to learn more about Nancy after the show, you can go to a few different websites, and we have all this posted on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages if you want to learn more. But NancyDanison.com, or you can go to where her books are at backwardsbooks.com. And with that, let's jump right into this episode. Nancy, welcome back to Inspired Living. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Mark. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you back. And like I said, this, I think it was 2020, right before COVID, or as COVID was either hitting or the world was changing with this global pandemic. And the the first book that you wrote, well, maybe not the first book, but one of the 5 books that you written, Answers from the Afterlife. I still have it here on my bookshelf. That was a very popular show with our listeners. And so when we came across this new book that you've written and is coming out, let's explore some of the concepts and maybe even touch a little bit on what we talked about last time, Answers from the Afterlife, or anything I may have missed in your bio.
Okay. I don't want to talk about me because I'm not important. The only thing important in my life is the messages that I have brought back from the afterlife. And, Mark, having heard, pieces and parts of my afterlife experience the last time, I have spent the past 30 years searching for others like me, other souls that had the same or similar afterlife experience and learned the same things. Well, I finally knuckled down and did some concentrated research, and I found 32 others. So we are the 33 souls who had what I find to be the closest to the experience that I had. And my book isn't ready to come out yet. It's still it's stuck in the design phase, but it should be out in January.
Yeah, the editing process is always so slow, and you just gotta have patience for that editing process to get done. So I'm just curious, Nancy, is the number 33 specific, or is that just how many people you found?
That's how many people I found. I reviewed about 2,000 near-death experience accounts, accounts that were labeled as near-death experiences, either online or in research books or in the individual authors' books. But I found most of my 33 souls in the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation database, which is online. And so using my figures, I calculate about 1.4% of those who die actually have what I call an expanded afterlife experience and actually meet God. The rest clearly have a near-death experience, but they just didn't progress as far.
Okay. Yeah, and the reason I'm asking for 33 is, as a numerologist, 33 is a master number, and it's often referred to as the cosmic parent, as a 33. It's
funny.
It's an octave number of 6, which also refers to compassion, but the 33 energy, or the number, is all about the cosmic parent of the world that raises the vibration of humanity through service, creativity, and compassion. So that's why I was curious if 33 was intentional or 33 just ended up being the number. Because I always look for the signs, the symbols, the synergy, and the synchronicity. So that was my first question for you: was it based on the master number of 33, or, as you just said, it was just based off the 2,000 people you went through and 33 of them made it into your book?
Well, Mark, the funny thing is I had the whole book written with 32 souls. And then at the last minute, I found another one. So I had to go back and revise the whole book to add this 33rd soul. So,
Interesting. Yeah, the things that make you go, for sure. Because, again, there is no 32 in numerology. It's 11, 22, and 33 that are the master numbers of the index. So you're aligning, whether you knew it or not, you're aligning to that spiritual consciousness of evolution and transformation and ascension that we always talk about. And I think that's fantastic. So tell us a little bit about, you did this research in this database, and you found these people because your book talks about all believers, atheists, Buddhists, and Christians. And you yourself, like me, were raised as Catholics. I don't practice Catholicism anymore. I always like to say I'm a recovering Catholic. But talk a little bit about those, because those are pretty different beliefs from atheists, Buddhists, Christians, in Catholicism.
Yeah, and there were actually more. I think there was maybe one person who claimed to be agnostic, 1 or 2 atheists. There were a couple of Hindus in there, all different types of Protestants, from moderate to traditional to people who called themselves Christian seekers. Everyone really had a different description of their religious background, except the Catholics. They all just said they were Catholics. And there was one Native American who believes in Taoism.
Okay.
And, you know, a lot of the people really had, I guess I would say, self-tailored beliefs.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
they didn't seem to be very dogmatic, except for this one wonderful woman who was a Catholic pastoral counselor and, you know, had a degree in you know, Catholic studies. And she was pretty traditional in her Catholic beliefs until she got into the afterlife. And then, like me, her beliefs were blown apart.
It's like, hello, not what we were
Yeah.
taught. Yeah, it's, just my own experience with what I, encountered in a river accident. I didn't have any of the white tunnel, the white light. I was trapped underwater, and just had an experience where I was just at peace and just could see myself, rising up, looking back at myself. And then for some strange reason, I guess I had more work to do here. I popped down into my body, and I popped up after being, pinned under a log in the river. And so that's always kind of stuck with me. And it wasn't, any big grandiose. It was just a peace a peace and a love that I'd never felt before. And it was temporary. But some may call that an OBE, an out of body experience, or an NDE, um, based on, what we experience, because we are the sum of our experiences. Right. And, for our listeners out there, they may not understand what the difference is between an NDE and an afterlife experience. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I kind of look at it as a continuum of experiences. You know, the first aspect or the first stage of a near-death experience is getting out of body. And of course, I'm sure your listeners know you can get out of body without being close to death. But those who are actually close to death or who have died do get out of body first, which, you know, in itself is mind-blowing because it proves that consciousness and personality survives death. The next phase is what I call the crossing over stage, where the soul goes through, you know, maybe they go through a tunnel, but that's not really a major feature of most NDEs.
Correct.
But they go through some kind of transition, you know, a portal or an entrance or something that lets them know they're leaving human life behind and going into another state of existence. So I call that the crossing over phase. And so far, you know, the out of body and the crossing over people have what I call near-death experiences. When you get into the light itself, or you go through that portal or that entrance or that doorway, then you're in the afterlife. And I have divided the afterlife experiences into two buckets. One are the threshold, what I call threshold afterlife experiencers. Those are the ones who, you know, go into the light or go through the portal, and they are there long enough to have a life review. You know, many of them, you know, they might meet deceased family members or relatives or friends. They might see Earth-like scenery. I find it very rare that an afterlife experience doesn't meet a being of light. So most threshold experiencers meet a being of light. And then kind of like the last step in that threshold phase is having a life review. And the life review is generally just, you know, like what you hear, your life flashing before your eyes. It's after the life review, if you continue to be in the afterlife, that what I call an expanded afterlife experience starts. The dividing line between the threshold and the expanded afterlife experience seems to be a barrier. Like traditional near-death experience in research describes some kind of a barrier or a boundary or a border, or, you know, sometimes like the soul will see a bridge that they can't cross or a stream that they can't cross, but it's something that stops the soul from going further into the afterlife. Or maybe the light being with them says, you know, it's not your time, you know, you've got to go back. Or if for some reason they're brought back, you know, maybe they're resuscitated by medical personnel. Sometimes their souls are actually called back out of the bliss of the afterlife by their relatives and loved ones, begging them not to go. That I find that to be a very disturbing spin, because I begged my mother not to go and I didn't realize what I was doing, you know. But then if you don't hit that barrier, that boundary, or nobody tells you, you got to turn around and go back, then you go on into, the deeper recesses of the afterlife and have all the wild adventures that my 33 souls did. One of which is getting to actually meet, recognize, and meld into what humans call God or Yahweh or Allah or whatever.
And what was that like, that experience? If you can describe it.
It took me 3 chapters to describe it in the words of the 33 souls. The first, these 33 souls, we were trying to describe something unknown to human life. Mm-hmm. There literally are no words created in human language, in any language, that really convey the accuracy and the truth and the bliss and the sublime, infinite majesty of what we met. So various souls described it in different ways, all of which seemed to me to be centered around some kind of an energy pattern. Like some described it as a river, like a sparkling river, or a galaxy, or a cosmos full of stars, or a force field of love. I love that. One guy calls it a force field of love. Yeah. But it was all some kind of a power or something that wasn't in physical form, but yet had movement and was changing as it went, as it flowed like a river, or as it spun around in the cosmos. Right. But each soul that saw what they're trying to describe as source recognized that that's what it was. And this, what I call the source phenomenon, didn't have any human characteristics at all. And none of the 33 souls saw religious figures or, icons from their religion or lack of religion.
Right. No, that's fascinating to me, because I always try to, when I'm interviewing people, trying to get them to explain something that it sometimes is unexplainable. But I like how you put like the river of life, right? We always hear about the river of life in many both religious and spiritual contexts. And then you said the universe, like a galaxy, which Carl Sagan always said that we were stardust, and we return, as stardust, we return to that source, that collective energy. And I was just thinking, when you were talking about trying to describe this, meeting God, compared to what we're taught in religion. The movie, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, when she gets whisked away through a portal, and she said, you shouldn't have sent a scientist, you should have sent a poet to describe what she was trying to explain that she was seeing with her own experience. And that's kind of where, when you were talking, that's kind of what it reminded me of. Like you almost need a poet to try to describe, what it is that you're experiencing, and what we call, what we try to understand as God. But I don't believe that we truly have an understanding of what God really is. We have a lot of books and a lot of references, but God is also made by man. If you did a timeline, I've got a little bit later in the show, I've got a timeline of when, how long the earth has been around, and what religious traditions started creating their image of God. And in Christianity's, only about 2,000 years. You can go, farther down into the more older religions, but still about 6,000 years. But the earth has been around for, the galaxy's been around for 13 billion years. So that's just, and I was curious, when you did die in March of, was that 84? Did I read that?
94.
Did I remember that? 94, thank you. When you came back, I'm just curious, because we always talk about time is not relevant on the other side. How long were you gone in the physical incarnate of where you were in the hospital? Do you know how long you were gone by minutes? Just curious.
Well, I didn't until recently, and finally the hospital where I died released my medical records to me.
Oh, interesting. Good timing.
They would not give them to me. And when I got them, I noticed that a lot of them were altered. They said corrected in some month in 2008, which was after my first book came out.
Interesting, yeah.
But so one of them says that, putting together what the time that the radiologist and the radiology technician left and when they came back was a half an hour. And I was dead shortly after they left, and I came back into the body after they came back.
Okay, so about 30 minutes, maybe, give or take.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, and the reason I'm asking that, because here in this timeline, time is not relevant in the spiritual side, right? And so 30 minutes here, but how long do you feel like you were on the other side having your expanded afterlife experience, would you say? Did it feel like days? Did it feel like weeks? Did it feel like months versus 30 minutes of, being decarnated on the other side?
Those feelings don't exist in the afterlife. I lived there. I mean, I lived as a being of light. I lived through several stages of eternal life.
Interesting. Okay.
But there's no feeling like how much time has passed.
Right. Okay, I love it. Well, we're gonna go to our only break of this show, and when we come back here in 2 minutes, we're gonna kind of pick up this conversation and keep diving deeper into the afterlife. And our special guest today, Nancy Danison, talking about her new book, 33 Souls Who Met God: Accounts of Atheists, Buddhists, and Christians Who Died and Met the Same God. We'll be right back here on Inspired Living.
The future of internet radio is here. Om Times Radio, IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
One planet, 7.3 billion people. Only one you. Life offers us many opportunities and learning experiences. Are you ready to explore and discover this beautiful planet, the life and energy all around us, the spiritual world, and what is unseen, along with your own personal soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, is the spiritual connection you have been prospecting for. Internationally known as a tested and professional clairvoyant medium and spiritual advisor, Marc's work as a metaphysical teacher, medical instructor, radio show host, inspirational writer, and hiking guide are here to help you on a journey of self-discovery, healing, inspiration, education, and a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. Dare to dream. Dare to explore. Dare to live. For more information on Marc's spiritual practice in Seattle, Washington, please visit marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing
a job and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Inspired Living. I want to open up the second half of the show with a quote from Stephen Christopher, who reminds us, quote, "Death is not the end. It's simply walking out of the physical form and into the spiritual realm, which is our true home. It's going back home," end quote. So, Nancy, welcome back. I want to read one of your quotes as well, because you said this that we put out on our Facebook page. Quote, "I returned from death to share new truths I learned in the afterlife," end quote. So tell us a little bit about the afterlife. We just talked about time not being relevant. You were living there. You didn't, did you realize that you had died on the other side? Had that crossed your mind while you were having your expanded afterlife experience? Did somebody tell you that? Did you know that? Or
No, not for a long time. But don't let me forget. I want to tell you the other two parts of the description of God that the 33 souls brought back.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, in direct answer to your question, I did not realize that I had died until I was looking down on my body from the afterlife and looking at it sitting in the chair in the mammography room. But I knew I wasn't on Earth. I knew the body was, but I knew I wasn't. I knew I was in the light. So I said to myself, nah, I couldn't have died.
Come on,
so
God.
that's when it dawned on me. Okay, well, let's go back to the description of God from the 33 souls. The second part is that each of us realized that we could perceive separate things within Source. Some called it golden orbs. One called it spheres of awareness. Some called it stars, lights, individual consciousnesses in little packages, all of which collectively made up God. So we all experienced and got the knowledge that Source is both an infinite, singular creator deity, and it is a collection of all of these zillions of little stars or orbs or lights or what we call souls. So then the third part is that we each realize that we are one of those golden orbs or stars or lights or sphere of consciousness, and that we are God ourselves. That's the mind-blowing part of this book.
Yeah, I'm just kind of letting that set in for our listeners to, ponder that visual of, that experience. Because as I was doing research for this show, as I always do, to learn more about whether it's, the NDE experience or the afterlife experience, one of the things I came across, it said there's, the universe, which I was saying is about 13.8 billion years old, and that's been rewritten because the James Webb Telescope that's been out there for 2 years. We thought it was about 9 billion. We can look back in time and say, oh no, the universe is about 13 billion. So 9, 10, 11, 12, we're about 4 billion years off, right? But one of the things I came across is, the universe created itself. Someone created the universe, or the universe has always been. And in one of those three definitions, they're all three mind-blowing if you think about it. And so what you're explaining is, more along the lines that the universe was created by a higher source that many of us call God, or, different definitions depending on where you're at in the world. But as far as, your time there and, the love and the support that you were feeling, were you sad? Was there any human emotions to come back to the physical incarnate after that 30 minutes on this side of the house? Do you remember any kind of like, I don't know, like, I don't want to leave? Because that's how I felt. I did not want to leave in my NDE. I was very at peace with what was happening. And then all of a sudden I got shot right back into my body, and I was kind of upset about it. And I was like, no, I was enjoying my experience, and now I'm back underwater. I'm just curious if you had any thoughts after you came back, or any kind of, depression or sadness, or what was what was the psychology of this experience for you?
Well, first I was convinced the whole time I was in the afterlife that I wasn't coming back to human life.
Mm-hmm.
I was just certain of that. But, once I watched that history of religious development on earth, and I got the answers to all my questions about, what is God? What am I? What's the purpose of life? Why am I on earth? Where's heaven? Where's hell? What's the one true religion? And I got those answers, and I realized they were so completely different than Catholicism. I kept saying, kind of like under my breath or in my mind, somebody ought to tell those people. And I meant those people down on earth. Somebody ought to tell those people. Well, here at the end of my experience, after I awakened to the fact that I am God, I am Source, always have been, and that I decided on my own to come into Nancy's body, all of a sudden I start heading back down into Nancy's body. And the first thought was, I didn't mean me. Somebody started telling people, but I didn't mean me.
I was speaking in third person.
Yeah. And so when I got back down near the body, I fought it. I fought like tooth and nail not to go into her. And I fought it the whole time. I was like being absorbed into the body, and I kind of flowed through it, kind of like blood does. And I kept fighting, I didn't want to go all the way into it because it was, Mark, it was cold, wet, heavy, dank, disgusting, rotted flesh. But more importantly, I wanted to be free as air. I wanted to have all the knowledge. I wanted to be who I was in the afterlife. I wanted to be a light being. And all that was stripped away from me as I was being stuffed back into this body. And so for about 2 years, all I wanted to do was go home, back to the afterlife. I wasn't suicidal or anything like that. And I wasn't really depressed. I was homesick. And then after 2 years, I realized, well, I did go back once within a few months after my first afterlife experience. I did go back once, and I got the message, you're supposed to be doing a mission there, girlie, get with a program. But after that, I realized I wasn't going to go back to the afterlife. I was going to be in Nancy's life for a while. I was just stupefied at how different the afterlife is from what I've been taught as a Catholic. And I was hurt and upset. I just couldn't reconcile, what I had learned as a Catholic and what the truth was in the afterlife. And so I spent a lot of years just kind of flailing. And that's why I left my law firm to go out on my own, was because I didn't want to flail and hurt anybody but me. I didn't want to hurt my partners, and bless their little hearts, all my clients came with me. But I was just lost, Mark, for about 7 years. And then I finally got my stuff together while I was writing the book Backwards Beliefs. And that kind of helped me, reconcile that, what I learned as a Catholic was kind of a baseline. It makes a lot of sense. If all you've got to work with is human knowledge and human observation of human life, and, all the religious beliefs of the world are thousands of years old. They were all thought up by people who had no education. There was no reading or writing. There were no telescopes. There was no knowledge about, lots of people thought that the stars and the planets were gods. There was just nothing but ignorance to work with. So, I realized, you can't hold it against people that did their best to understand, spiritual life and God and, how they got to be here when they didn't have any tools to work with. But now, of course, we've got all these near-death experiences that we can read and understand and absorb, and can give us a lot more information from firsthand experiences. And so I just kind of, saw it as a continuum of learning. I learned what the ancients believed, and then I learned what's actually the truth directly from source. And I just kind of put that into a spectrum, a continuum.
Yeah, I love that. And here we are talking about it today for millions of people to listen to, even now and even after we're gone, right? So that's the beauty of podcasting. A couple things that you said that was interesting to me, because you said it was about 7 years, which again, if we apply numerology, 7 is all about
I
truth,
know.
right? So coming to the truth
Yeah.
of what you witnessed, what you experienced. And, it's interesting because like I said, I did some research because, when I started to have my spiritual awakening, and for our listeners out there, just a reminder, you have to really kind of unlearn everything that you've been taught or learned to believe up and, regardless of what your age is, including religion. And that's the thing that I found the hardest for me was to unlearn some of the things I've been taught to believe, like, we die and we go to this big cloud up in the sky. And it's like, well, if you break down logically and scientifically, you can't go up or down because we're on a round planet, right? It's metaphysically impossible to go up or down in the grand scheme of things. But we assume that heaven is up because we ascend out of our bodies. I'm sure in your book, a lot of people talked about the ascension of moving out of the body, looking back, et cetera, et cetera. So I always remind people that, whatever your belief system is, whether it's heaven, the afterlife, Summerland, it's not a location, it's a vibration. And when you realize that, like you were describing, coming back into the body as cold and it's that heavy vibrational of matter and, materialize in the human body, if you will. But what I did, Nancy, and just to give from some perspective about what you were saying about, education and ignorance and at the times, and of course we have technology today, right? We're in the roaring 20s of transformation. So like I said, the universe was created 13.82 billion years ago. Earth is about 4.5 billion years. Mankind is about 200,000 years. And then the age of concept with God is only about 10,000 years. Age of mother God, because we have the God concept, and then we have mother God, which is about 8,000 years. And then we start breaking down into our religion. Hinduism is one of the oldest religions at 6,000 years. Zoroastrianism is about 4,000 years. Judaism is 4,000 years. Jainism is about 2,600 years. Buddhism is 2,600 years. Confucianism is 2,500 years. Taoism is 2,400 years. Christianity is 2,000 years. Islam is 1,200 years. And the age of, Sikhism is about 400 years. So we have various gods that have been created by man at various periods of our time, right? In that 4.5 billion years that we've been here on this planet. So in a sense, God is really man's creation based off the time, what they're learning. But what you are describing, Nancy, is something far superior, how do you put it into words? How do you put into words returning to source? The laws of physics says energy always has to return to source, and the energy in our heart has to return somewhere, right? The energy in our heart that makes us live has to go somewhere, but sometimes you can't explain the unexplainable, right? So that's what I came across when I was doing research for the show, is about the length of time based on different religions, with Hinduism being about the oldest at 6,000 years, which isn't, if you think about it, that's not a lot of long period of time compared to 4.5 billion years, right?
Right. But, you're making another point that comes out of the 33 Souls stories, and that is, regardless of what they believed before they died, regardless of what kind of religious figure they might have expected to see, whether they expected to see Lord Vishnu or Jesus Christ or, something else, we all saw the same kind of a thing, an energetic thing that is composed of all of us and radiates, and in fact is composed of and created of love. And that's something else I find mind-blowing about being in the afterlife. And you felt that love too. Mm-hmm. What the 33 Souls describe is that source, what we call source, the energy that it gives off is what we call love. So anytime you feel love, even when you're inside these bodies, you are feeling source's energy. And when you give love, you're giving somebody else's life an input, a bolus of source energy.
Yeah. And I always say grief is proof that you love someone, right? When you're grieving, when you've lost a family, a friend, or a fur baby, I always remind people that grief, that loss that you feel, is also that love. That means that you loved somebody, you were connected with them. as a professional medium. I know that's real because I've done thousands of readings with people all around the world, and I talk to dead people that really aren't dead, that are more alive than you and I are now. And the one thing they always talk about, the consistency, is the love that goes back and forth over that, which you described as a barrier or a threshold, no different than the threshold going into your house, right? We all enter a threshold. In fact, all modern homes today are created with what we call a threshold. When you enter that doorway, a threshold, you're in your home. And you talked about it as that barrier or threshold. But what was also interesting to me is when you said Nancy in third, you were talking about third person. That free will and choice still applied even on the other side to go, okay, well, she just said Nancy, let's send her back because we need to be her and have her be an ambassador for the afterlife, right? So that's kind of interesting to me that free will and choice is still there on the other side, because it sounded like you didn't really want to come back.
Well, free will and choice is source. Humans do not have free will and choice. Humans are earth animals that are driven by instinct and drives. Chief among them being the survival instinct.
Survival, yeah.
And then drives for eating, drinking, sleeping,
right.
recreating, and having sex, procreating.
Yeah, procreating.
So that source is the one with free will. And even though and some of the 33 souls did not want to come back, Mark, it wasn't laid out real clearly, that somebody was making a decision. And because we are source, there's no us making the decision, source making the decision. There's no, line there. There's no demarcation. So it wasn't that, I was sent back. It wasn't that I chose to come back. I just did, there wasn't any decision to it. And that's the way some of the others felt. Now, some of the others were called back by family or being resuscitated or something like that.
Right. Brought back with a, 80 AED shock to the heart, and like, oh, got brought back. And again, think about that. That's interesting because you're using energy to shock the heart, to bring the energy back to the heart and bring that person back from the other side. So it is really, like you said, energy source. And as far as the book, I'd love to get a copy when it comes out. So please send a copy to me, digital or hardback is fine. Because I'd love to read it. How big of a book is it? And let's talk a little bit for our listeners. Let's talk about the book or anything that you want to expand upon in the last part of the show here about this book, 33, people that met God and had the same perspective, I guess.
Yeah. How big of a book is it? What do you mean?
Yeah, like pages. Like, is it an easy read? Is it a long read? Is it War and Peace kind of book, or is it big thick book, or is it a small, couple hundred pages book?
Yeah, it's 224 pages, and then another. I think that includes 10 pages of footnotes. I have like hundreds of footnotes because I have hundreds of quotes.
Yeah, and references. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to put words into the mouths of these other souls, so I used their own. And in terms of I think it's easy to read because I write, pretty simply and clearly, but it's so mind-blowing that I don't think anybody can just like sit down and read it straight through. It's something you have to go back to over and over.
Yeah, that's I got a few of those books I'm looking at here on my bookshelf. One of them is The Untethered Soul. I don't know if you ever read that by Mr. Singer. That's one of the books that I have to constantly come back to. Or any books by Paul Selig. He does a lot of Book of Truth. He's we've had him on the show, and it's just so depth of content is so spiritually deep. You almost have to read it a couple times to understand, in layman's terms, what you're trying to say, right? And so I look forward to getting that book and reading about it, because it sounds exciting, and especially when you have 33 different people, right? It's like telephone. You get 33 people in a room and you try to tell the same thing, and you end up with 33 different stories, right? You pass the story on to the next person. So I think it's fabulous that you put this together to have these perspectives, but all seeing the same thing is what we call God, or what we define as God. So what's besides the website that I gave, is there other places that the book is going to be published out to that you want to share with the listeners?
It will eventually be on, Amazon and Barnes and Noble
Amazon.
and bookstores all around the world.
Okay.
I've noticed more and more bookstores are picking it up. It was so funny, Mark. I was looking online Black Friday, and I got an alert that one of my books was a Black Friday special at Target.
Nice. I love that.
And
I love that.
And I thought, Kmart might have, shoot, now the name's escaping me. The number one singer, Swiftie. Kmart might have Taylor Swift, but Target has moi. But anyway, so the book will be out in paperback, hopefully next month, and it'll be available everywhere. Amazon's usually the one that carries the most copies. I also have copies available on my websites. And then something else I would like for your listeners to know is I do monthly webinars. I've done them I started in January 22. And each one is like an hour and a half on a very limited topic, something, that I brought back from the afterlife. And I go into it in detail, and then we discuss it, at the end. And I have been little by little weaving my 33 Souls material into those webinars over the past probably year. So, and I do slides, they're PowerPoint slides. So, most of the webinar is looking at PowerPoint slides with me talking about them, but that's so I can put the quotes up there and you can actually read them yourself. And I have found those webinars to be wonderful for me, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback from them. And then I turn the webinar into a video. And so the videos of all the past webinars are on my website, NancyDanison.com. And then I've also been doing, one of the big topics of information that I got in the afterlife was about manifesting. And it was explained to me and shown to me and demonstrated to me 3 times. And it's one of the things I remember the most about. So I have been doing coaching, for years. I've been coaching people one-on-one on the telephone on how to create a manifesting plan. Well, I started doing workshops that are like coaching. It's a 3-hour workshop where only 8 people can come, and each one gets their own manifesting plan that we create together. But so you get not only your own manifesting plan, but you get to hear other people's plans, and that kind of gives you a better idea of examples of how to do a plan and how to manifest something. Well, starting in January, I'm going to be delving into harmful beliefs that people have picked up, usually in early childhood, and how they have lifelong devastating effects. So in January, the first one is going to be the harmful effects of prejudices. And we're going to have a group discussion about, how people learn to be prejudiced, against different races, against different religions, against, sexual orientation, all the various prejudices that exist out there. And then how the victims learn to continue to be victims. And, what can you do to break out of that victimhood? So it should be hopefully a very lively discussion. And then in February, we're going to talk about the harmful effects of some religious beliefs. I've been having a lot of my one-on-one coaching clients ask me, or they'll tell me they're recovering Catholics. I've heard that phrase many times.
Oh yeah, I use it myself.
Yeah, I'm a recovering Catholic. And so that's what gave me the idea, because it is, some religions are so vastly different from what, the expanded afterlife experiencers have learned, that it really, like you said, it takes a lot of work to turn your mind around and start looking at things more objectively. And so that February workshop February workshop will be talking about, how we have been hurt by some of these religious beliefs. And the chief among them, I think, is the idea that we're sinners. I mean, now it seemed normal to me when I was growing up, but now looking back telling little tiny children that they're sinners and that they're going to go to hell unless they have baptism. I mean, what kind of cruelty is that?
Yeah. Burn in the fire of hell. Yeah, it's from a psychology standpoint, a lot of people would argue that's a form of abuse. So, I think what you're doing is great work, Nancy, and I appreciate you coming back to share your new book, and congratulations on your new book, and share your insight as an ambassador of the Afterlife. If you want to check out Nancy's work, her new book, 33 Souls Who Met God, Accounts of Atheists, Buddhists, and Christians Who Died and Met the Same God. You can get all the information at our Inspired Living social media pages, or you can go to nancydanison.com or backwardbooks.com. It's been a pleasure having you back as our guest, and I just wish you many blessings, happy holidays, and continuing the work that you are doing.
Thank you so much, Mark, and happy holidays to you and all your listeners. Bless you all.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. All right. Until our next soul adventure together, be kind, caring, and compassionate. Most importantly, dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover that diamond within. We'll be back for another episode of Inspired Living. Happy holidays to everybody. Until next time, take care, stay weird. Widely enlightened individuals recreating dreams.